All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Monday edition of the Next Gen Nurses Free Webinar Series. My name is Dr. Jennifer Bonner. I am a certified nurse midwife with over 15 years of nursing experience, and I currently serve as the tutor manager of nursing services here at Archer Review. And I am delighted that you're joining me this morning. It is officially 9:30 Central Time. I am ready to get going. So before we get started, I'm interested in knowing how many of you are in the middle of nursing school? How many of you are still in class, still working towards graduation? You can let me know in the webinar chat. If you are joining us on YouTube or Facebook, please go ahead and let me know there. Interested to see who is kind of joining me. My first semester, Shirley. Awesome. Welcome. Well, I'm hoping that today, during our time together, it'll be clearer on how do we work smarter but not harder. So we're going to go through some various different testing tips, things that we can do to make our lives a little more manageable during this time of nursing school. And so for those of you who are joining me, go ahead, let me know, where are you joining me from? So I am in sunny and chilly South Dakota today. Wondering, where is everyone else joining me from? Houston, New York, Connecticut. Hey, Florida. Wonderful. New Jersey, still in nursing school. Florida. Okay, wonderful. Looks like we are now officially on Instagram. That was taking me just a moment. So welcome to everyone. Dallas, Florida. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. We have quite the slide deck to go through today, but I want to talk about some of the most common pitfalls that we see when it comes to nursing school. And sometimes we are just really gung ho, we're really wanting to be successful. And sometimes we overload, we take on too much. Now, sometimes that can be material, sometimes that can be other things in life. Have you ever been completely overloaded and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, could you," and then fill in the blank? So, this happens to me quite frequently where I already feel overloaded and then someone else needs something. And I am the type of person that I want to try to make those things happen if I at all possibly can. And so I say, "Yeah, sure, no problem," right? And then what happens is I start to feel burnt out. I start to get stressed out, things like that. We could do the same thing with the information in nursing school, right? There's a lot to know, there's a lot to figure out. And sometimes we see this with cramming. Anybody ever been there? I am a recovering crammer. I did a lot of that in nursing school. I am not proud of it. And I am here to tell you it is not helpful. It might help you for that exam, but it is not going to help you in the long run. And so if we sit down and we say, okay, it's time to get ready for the NCLEX. My NCLEX is on Monday. I haven't been studying. That is not going to help us. That's taking on too much information. That's overloading. Passive learning. So when we are talking about passive learning, we need to know, what does that look like? These are things that are not really helping us. We're just kind of looking at things. So this would be rereading, this would be highlighting. And basically, what we're doing is we're looking in there and we're going, "Oh, this seems important. I'm just going to highlight it," but we don't do anything with that. The other thing is, when we get so overwhelmed, a lot of times we can get to the point where we are completely neglecting ourselves. Now, if you've been joining us on Facebook, on our other social media platforms, you've noticed that I've gone live a couple times to give you some self-care ideas, like taking a walk, going out to study with a buddy. Those types of things are going to be important for the long run. So making sure that you're eating those balanced meals, getting in some lean proteins, getting in fruits, vegetables, colors on your plate, various colors. So maybe carrots, bell peppers. Let's see, they our Sam's Club where I live has the little bitty bell peppers. They're very small, probably about that big. And there's yellow, red. They have orange ones as well. And so getting those different colors on your plate is going to be helpful, not only for the appeal, the visual appeal, but also for your nutritional purposes. The other thing is a lot of times, especially when you have other things, other responsibilities in life, whether you're caring for children, for parents, for grandparents, aunts and uncles, um, animals, significant others, or you are working, all of those things can combine to struggle for your attention, right? And so a lot of times when that happens, we decide to take from our sleeping schedule, and our body really needs that rest. And when we don't give our body what it needs, we get fatigued, we start to get stressed out, we get irritable. Okay. So those are really important things to keep in mind too. And the other thing is sometimes we just have to admit that we weren't really wonderful with managing our time. And this could be that, I have 30 minutes today to work on mental health. Well, I'm gonna sit here. Oh man, Crossy Road. I love this game. And the next thing I know, what happens? It's been 30 minutes and I've lost that amount of time. And then we're going, oh no, I don't know this information. Or maybe I did poorly on an exam, but I didn't manage my time wisely. Or maybe I waited till the last minute. I just got an email this morning from a student that is wanting to do some tutoring for an exam that's coming up. But the exam is not even this week, it's several weeks away. And they're already reaching out saying, hey, I know I'm going to need some help. Can you help me? So, managing our time is really important. So, let's talk through some ways that we can be successful. We're going to talk about a couple different steps. And our first step is to being a better student is understanding learning. So when we understand learning and how we particularly learn, this is going to help us. So we want to figure out, how does learning actually work? Well, one of those things is memory retention. If I'm going to be working hard, I want to make sure that it is for my good, that it's fruitful, right? I want to make sure that I'm remembering the things that I'm working on. So we want to make sure that we are exercising our brain muscles. Okay. So repetition is going to work. This is where we are working on information, but in increments. Okay. So I might work on mental health this morning, and then maybe this afternoon when I come back to it, maybe my kids are going to be down for a nap. I can come back to it and I can review, make sure I remember what I studied this morning. If I don't, I'm going to go on and work on that again and then move on to some more information. The forgetting curve. Now, 50% of what we learn, typically we will forget within an hour, and then 90% of that within a week. So we want to make sure that we are adding to that information. So let's say this morning I covered pharmacology. Well, I know this afternoon I need to go pick up one of my kiddos from school. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take um, my pharmacology note cards, and I'm going to review those while I'm sitting in the line waiting for my kiddo. So finding ways that we can add that in. Now, someone is saying, can you give a realistic example of managing time? So when we are managing our time, a lot of times what I will do is I will either use my smart device, and trust me, I am a working nurse. I was a working student through nursing school, and the same thing applies as in my example. So if we are managing our time well, what does that look like? That means scheduling in time. That means scheduling in our work, making sure that on my schedule here, I have a shared calendar with my family so everybody knows where everybody's at, what we have going on, what needs to be covered. And so I'm going to put my working time in there. I'm even going to include my travel time. I'm going to put in time for dinners, making time for my family, making time for myself. Maybe I'm going to schedule a massage every couple weeks, but I'm also going to schedule in those blocks of studying. I'm going to study, maybe if it's just 30 minutes before I need to leave or I need to start getting ready, I'm going to schedule that in. I'm going to set my timer to give me that alert to remind me to get up. Now, other ways that we can learn, active learning. We want to make sure that we're starting to apply these things, getting to the point where we are able to verbalize those concepts out loud, where we can explain it to someone else for them to understand. Doing those practice questions, utilizing opportunities, utilizing tools that we have that are going to help us be successful when we get to the NCLEX exam, right? So taking questions that are going to be worded very similar to what we're going to see on the NCLEX. And then we want to look at multisensory learning. So this is using a variety of areas in order to learn. Now, there are tons of assessments you can do online that will tell you the type of learner you are, and start to use those. The more senses we can involve, the better. So maybe we're going to listen to a podcast. Maybe we're going to draw a concept map. Maybe we are going to outline the how the blood flow works through the fetal heart. Maybe we're going to use some different colors. Using different opportunities to get our brain working is going to help us remember in the long run. Now, step 2, study strategies. These are my favorite because there are so many ways to study, but we're all trying to figure out what's going to work best. Well, what works best for you may not work best for me. So we want to look at a few different options that are going to help us and try to figure out what's working. So the first thing is planning. Whatever that looks like for you, whether you are a phone calendar user, maybe you're a paper calendar user. I use both. I'm just weird that way. I really like to write things down. I like to cross things off. But we want to make sure that we are putting in the planning to begin with. And then we want to prioritize that key material. So if you're in nursing school and your professor has given you a study guide, we want to prioritize that information. Or if you're reading through your textbook, you're going to notice that there are objectives for the chapter, making sure we understand what those are and trying to figure out what's the difference between need to know and, it's good to know. We know that on the NCLEX, a lot of times the that high yield information are things like placenta previa, placental abruption, preeclampsia, postpartum hemorrhage, those types of things. And so those are need to know. Now, it's nice to know things like when it's okay to give someone something to eat or drink in labor, right? But that's not really a need to know. We want to know those high yield concepts. And then we're going to look at this spaced repetition right here. So we want to use various different things like flashcards, like we talked about earlier, maybe using a little Quizlet or an online quizzing system to figure out how we are doing with that information. And we can do that over the week. So if we know we have a test next week, we can start it now to see where our gaps are lying. And then do some active reading. So I want you to make sure that when you're reading, it is important that we read that information, but figure out how do we apply it. So when I am working through that, I want to, every so often, I want to stop and make sure that I'm able to summarize what I was reading, because what happens if you're anything like me, a lot of times I get distracted. And I start to think about the dishes in the sink or the dinner that needs to be made. And then I get distracted from the reading that I was supposed to be doing. So staying engaged in our reading is going to be helpful. And then our study groups. Let me show you where you can find our small groups. Now, many of these are applicable to nursing school. But what you're going to do is you're going to go into archerreview.com. You're going to head over to nursing and you're going to scroll down and you're going to see this little section down here. This is engaging webinar series. You're going to see that later on today this will be 10 a.m. Mountain Time, Tiffany is going to be hosting a fundamental small group. And then tomorrow we have a specialties small group. We have test taking strategies. We have pharmacology crash course coming up next week. So find one of those that works for you. These are $25 each, except for the $75 pharmacology crash course. You won't want to miss it. It's a great value, a wonderful way to be able to study with others and get some great information. All right, what's our next step? So our step 3 is going to be tools and resources. So figuring out what we have at our disposal and knowing how to use it. Technology. We are able to come alongside you. We have an amazing Archer for Nursing School product that is able to be a companion for nursing school. Come alongside you, kind of fill in those gaps. I know as a professor, sometimes we don't get to everything that we need to during our classroom time. And sometimes you just need somebody to go through that information. It's an amazing opportunity. Private tutoring, small groups. We have both 30-minute and 60-minute private tutoring sessions. You should check out our availability online, but those are wonderful if you're just needing a one-on-one approach, totally customizable depending on what it is that you need. Talking with someone in the library. Now, most schools have the library with someone available that can help you with writing papers. They can help you find the most up to date information, evidence based practice, right? Using your calendars appropriately and counseling. Let me take a moment to spend a minute here. I want you to make sure that your mental health is prioritized. There's a lot being asked of you right now, and that is just in nursing school. That's not counting the other areas of life that are requesting your attention. So if you're struggling, don't forget to reach out, whether that's to a teacher, a counselor, a primary care provider. Please make your mental health a priority. We know this is hard. We've all been there, and there's a lot of things going on all at the same time. So reach out early and reach out often if you need to. Now, step four, time management and self care. We've talked a little bit about this before, but we want to make sure that we're prioritizing what's important, right? So we know that we get exhausted. We are human. It happens. It's a lot of information. So when we have big tasks, big projects, breaking them up into smaller chunks can sometimes be helpful. You've heard the statement, what's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So big things, break them up into smaller chunks and give yourself those smaller deadlines. So let's say you have a paper that's due. Well, I might set a timeline by this Thursday. I want to have the introduction done. By this weekend, I want to have the first two paragraphs done. I want to have chosen my evidence based practice articles, maybe, if that's something that's appropriate. And then make sure you have your ultimate due date available too. But give yourself some time just in case you need to do some proofreading, which you absolutely should before you turn it in. Maybe give it to someone else to look at. Fresh eyes, a lot of times, will make a huge difference there. Identifying that crucial material. Okay, so when we have heard things, we have seen things. I know when I was teaching in the classroom, sometimes I would say things a couple times just to give the hint, hey, this is important. So if you're hearing it more than once, it's important. If you've read it more than once, it's important. If you're seeing it in your school notes and your textbook, important information. Figure out if it's a safety issue. Okay, what is a safety issue? If it is a safety issue, we know that's really important. And then what information is foundational? So again, we have that foundations later on today. If you're interested, I would check that out. But that is really important information to get us headed in the right direction. And then prioritizing self-care, getting the right sleep, getting the nutrition that your body needs, exercise. Y'all, even a little bit of exercise can be really important. It can be really helpful as you are moving in on this journey. Getting outside to go for a quick walk around your block can reset your mindset to where you're ready to attack when you get back to your study material. And then figure out when you're studying with friends, talk about how those breaks can really help. We want to make sure that we all are getting the benefit out of this time. And sometimes we just need a change of scenery, maybe a little bit of vitamin D before we move on. All right. So we have a couple minutes left. I'm wondering what questions you have. And while you're thinking of those, please go ahead and put them in the webinar chat. Let's look at a couple questions together. The nurse is caring for assigned clients. The nurse should initially follow up on the client who what? Has a basilar skull fracture and has bruises under their eyes, had a craniotomy and has a change in the Glasgow Coma scale from 13 to 11 in the last hour, has amyotrophic trophic lateral sclerosis and is requesting to have resuscitation efforts withheld, has Guillain-Barré syndrome and is reporting lower extremity muscle weakness. What do you think? What are your thoughts here? I'm seeing a couple great answers here. Nice work. Let's see how we're doing on YouTube and Facebook. Seeing a couple great answers there. All right, let's go ahead and look at this one. A basilar skull fracture that has bruises under the eyes. What do we call that? What's that bruising right here around the eyes? What do we call that? What do we call that? It's called raccoon eyes, right? Is that something we're anticipating with a basilar skull fracture? Absolutely. So that is something that we would expect with a basilar skull fracture. So I'm going to leave that one for the moment and I'm going to go ahead and look at letter B. Had a craniotomy and has a change in the Glasgow Coma scale from 13 to 11 in the last hour. Is that concerning? Absolutely. Someone that's having that much of a change in the last hour is concerning. I definitely want to follow up on them. So because A is expected, whoops, I'm going to get rid of my little check mark and I'm actually going to eliminate letter A. But I'm not going to stop with letter B. I'm going to go ahead and look at letter C. Amyotrophic trophic lateral sclerosis requesting to have resuscitation efforts withheld. Okay, that is totally fine. I'm not concerned there. I mean, I am concerned with them, but I'm more concerned with letter B. So I'm going to eliminate letter C. Has Guillain-Barré syndrome and is reporting lower extremity muscle weakness. Okay, is that something expected? Absolutely. So I am going to go with letter B. So if you answered letter B, you are absolutely correct. So that lower extremity weakness with Guillain-Barré is expected. Okay, we know they have that ascending paralysis. They will have that neuropathy that's painful. Okay, so we're looking for what's expected versus what's not expected. So let's look at one more before we finish up. So the nurse is caring for a client in the emergency department who sustained a high voltage electrical burn. Which laboratory data should the nurse monitor to determine if the client is experiencing a complication from this injury? Is it the creatine phosphokinase, the white blood cells, the serum lipase, or the serum glucose? What do we think? Okay. I'm seeing some various answers here. I like it. I like it. Nice work. All right. So let's go ahead and look at this one. So, when we are thinking about a major electrical burn, our client is at risk for developing rhabdomyolysis. Okay. So, that muscular damage from a major electrical burn can be determined by getting what? Well, the CK levels. Okay. So, I like letter A. Those other laboratory studies that we would want to monitor following this electrical burn would be things like the potassium, the creatinine, blood urea, nitrogen, calcium, troponin, things like that. Now, what about our white blood cells? Our white blood cells are going to tell us if we have some type of infection, right? It's not going to really help us there. Letter C, serum lipase. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring our cardiovascular status, right? After this birth, think electricity. Our heart is a main electrical component there. So our lipase would be necessary if the physician suspected something like pancreatitis, but not necessarily in this situation. And our serum glucose. Now, monitoring the serum glucose after a thermal burn is essential, right? Hyperglycemia is something that we would be expecting, but not a major concern with electrical burn. It's not the priority lab to monitor here. Our priority is letter A. Nice work. Wonderful job today. I hope you were able to glean some tips that are going to help you going forward. Remember, here at Archer Review, we're more than just test prep. We're here to cheer you on in the here and now. We're here to walk alongside you. So if you are interested in any of our tutoring offerings, what I want you to do is I want you to go to archerreview.com. You're going to head on over. If you are getting ready to take the NCLEX, you can choose NCLEX RN, or you can head on over to the nursing school area. But let me show you where our tutors are. So you'll scroll down to tutors for whichever area you're needing, and then you will find a little calendar here. So we are pretty booked up, but if there's something in particular that you're needing, please don't hesitate. Send us an email to nclextutors@archerreview.com, and we're happy to help. Happy studying, everybody. Have a great week. Thanks for joining me today.